So you're wondering, should you move to Capitol Hill? You may know a lot about it, but you don't know much about the neighborhood. You don't know what it's like to live there, and when you look into it, sometimes you just get a bunch of information on the U.S. Capitol building, Library of Congress, the Senate, and all the other nearby attractions, and not an actual idea of what it's like to live there. Capitol Hill is an amazing neighborhood. I can tell you from my personal experience, I lived there for quite some time, really loved it. It's probably in my top 3 neighborhoods in DC that it is great to live in. I will speak from a neutral perspective though, because what you need to know are what's the community like, what the schools are like, what your commute might be like, as well as the real estate. You're going to want to know how much homes cost to purchase or rent, and we'll also compare it to nearby neighborhoods so you can really pin down whether Capitol Hill is right for you. Okay, so let's look at the stats a little bit. There are currently just over 21,000 people living on Capitol Hill. An interesting fact is that only about 4,000 of those people work for the government. That's DC or federal. 6,000 residents, which is the highest group, work for private companies. The average household is made up of 2 people, so you can get an idea of where you should land if you would like to move to Capitol Hill. The average household income is $157,000, split between 2 people. Most people, in fact 15,000 residents, live in the same home today that they did last year, which is great because then you know that people are happy living there and that there are probably a lot of homeowners living in the neighborhood as well. Looking at the commute, it has down on this list car as the number 1 transportation, 3,800 people out of that 21,000 we talked about. However, I think that this chart is probably a little misleading because they're not including subway. They say bus, railroad, bike, motorcycle, taxi cab, walk, and car. People get around a lot on the subway on Capitol Hill. It's very convenient. The numbers don't even add up to the 21,000, so like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000-ish of the 21,000 are commuting by these methods. The other 12 probably going by metro. So let's take a look at the metro. There are 2 metro lines running through Capitol Hill. You've got the orange line and the blue line, and there's 2 stops, Capitol South and Eastern Market. You aren't far from the Potomac Avenue Metro, depending on where you are in Capitol Hill. And you can also get to the Union Station Metro Center very easily. So very, very metro accessible neighborhood. The orange line will take you out to Virginia, to Arlington, towards Tyson. Many people work there. Out to Alexandria, a couple different ways. And also to Maryland, out to New Carrollton, Landover, Cheverly, nice places like that. And on the blue line, you've got Largo Town Center at the end of that route, which is where FedEx Field is. And a bunch of other fun things, close to Six Flags and all that. So yeah, you're only a few metro stops from where the Commanders play at FedEx Field. Me deciding on what to call within the limits of Capitol Hill actually presented its own problem. If you look at what Google has, it has this area here, which doesn't even get close to Lincoln Park, which I have always heard is part of Capitol Hill, and I've always included in it, so the barrier should be around there. If we look at some other maps, it takes you way past Lincoln Park. I decided to go with this area right here, which kind of splits the difference. And the way I came to that decision was looking at Capitol Hill District Historic Preservation Society's map. They know best. So it actually does encompass all of Lincoln Park and goes down to Southwest Freeway, which is where 395, 95 goes through Washington. Goes here around the Capitol a bit and up to and almost touching Union Station. You get a lot more of Northeast in there in this map, and this is what we're going to look at for our figures today. This is more valid than the Google one. Usually Google's right. This time they just made it really tiny, and that's not how big the neighborhood is. Okay, so as I mentioned, there are tons of people that use the metro to get around, but cars on Capitol Hill are really amazing because you are so close to 395 to get into and out of DC, get down to Southeast and the area past the Anacostia very easily by car. There's tons of parking because Capitol Hill is primarily made up of row homes. There are some condos and rental apartments, but most of Capitol Hill is row homes. So there is more street parking than I'd say most of DC, especially the prime locations. You're gonna have so much easier of a time parking your car on Capitol Hill than you will in Dupont, Kalorama, Georgetown. It really only compares to like Cleveland Park and some places like that where it's more of a neighborhood. And a lot of these row homes have parking in the back, either a garage or alley parking, something like that. So it really does free up a lot of street spaces. Another thing that's really nice that I remember from living on Capitol Hill, once you get on top of Capitol Hill, the streets are very flat. So it's very comfortable to walk to and from places like the Metro, to and from work, to and from with groceries. And also, helps with driving. There's very clear visibility, easy to make your turns. The streets are actually pretty broad because a lot of them turn into major arteries around the mall. Independence Avenue, Maryland Avenue, Constitution Avenue. These roads all merge in this area. So you have nice wide streets, flat streets, a lot of visibility. If it does happen to snow, it's still easy to get in and out of the neighborhood, potentially. What I will tell you, something I found when I lived there, was that Capitol Hill tends to be one of the last places the DC services plow when it does snow, because there are a lot of areas with lots of major steep grades, like Mount Pleasant, Cleveland Park, Adams Morgan, that need their plowing first. So because Capitol Hill does feel very suburban and is very flat, they do tend to be plowed last. So if you have bad tires, you're probably not driving in the snow on Capitol Hill for a couple days. One of the things I loved most about my time living there was you were literally a hop, skip, and jump from everything you could want. Grocery stores, dining, bars, nightlife, the Capitol, Library of Congress, Folger Theater, I don't know, whatever you want. Union Station, there's a railroad right there. But it feels very quiet and suburban because of all the row homes. It's not as corporate or congested as most neighborhoods, really truly in the whole DC area, if you're near metros or anything that's a major attraction. So to me, it just felt like this little private suburban enclave where you could walk 2 blocks and see fireworks, or walk 2 blocks and be on the Metro, but you didn't have to put up with the hassle that you do many other places with traffic and with just frankly lots more people. To get into some of the nicer everyday things to do, first we have Barracks Row on 8th Street Southeast by the Marine Corps Barracks, which is full of shops and a lot of great restaurants, particularly a lot of great international varieties. Barracks Row has tons of great events throughout the year, including this very memorable world record-breaking attempt to make the largest human ice cream cone earlier this year. And of course you have Eastern Market, which is a wonderful indoor-outdoor market. The inside section is a long, high-ceiling building with vendors selling a range of fruits, vegetables, meat, cheeses, as well as prepared food. And outdoors, you have artists selling their art, live bands, and all sorts of wonderful, unique goods for purchase. Eastern Market has served as the town center since 1873, so it's now over 150 years old. Eastern Market's indoor market is open every day except for Monday, and the outdoor market is open weekends and also on Tuesdays. The building also houses a private venue called the North Hall, which is really great, and you can book that for any of your special events. Parks on Capitol Hill. Just like the rest of DC, being number 1 for its park score in the entire United States, there are a ton of amazing parks and green spaces spread throughout the neighborhood. Another really nice thing about parks and playgrounds on Capitol Hill is that most households do not have children, so the playgrounds tend to be fairly quiet, even though they're quite nice. Large traffic circles, basically, Lincoln Park and Staten Park, are amazing places to do whatever you may want to do outside. They each have playgrounds for big kids, little kids, sculptures, benches. And of course, right next door, you also have everything exciting and fun on the National Mall, brought to you by the National Park Service and the Smithsonian for free. So you have plenty of opportunity to take advantage of all that green space and the museums, again, all at no charge. Let's take a look at the dog parks. You have the Virginia Avenue Dog Park in Capitol Hill, which is DC's largest public dog park. There are several parks throughout the neighborhood which have sort of a don't ask, don't tell policy with dogs off leash. Here's a little bit of social proof on that. You also have, just outside of Capitol Hill, the Congressional Cemetery, which for a fee allows you a membership where you can walk your dog off leash, and it goes to support the cemetery itself, which is a pretty cool symbiotic relationship if you ask me. Capitol Hill has a great range of in-boundary traditional schools. In addition to that, they have a large number of charter and magnet schools throughout the city that are available for your kids as DC residents. Here is literally just a list of elementary schools available to this single address in DC. So we only have time to touch on the public traditional options today. Your elementary school aged children will attend one of the following 6 elementary schools. Peabody, undergoing a little construction this summer. Brent, Watkins, Tyler, Payne, Maury, or Ludlow. Oh, as I look up more school information for you, I do want to tell you one really awesome thing about living in DC in general. Their websites are awesome. Like almost anything you need to do, like the DMV stuff, finding out which school your kids are going to go to, and then all the private alternatives, metro, taxes, everything about living in DC is online and very, very easy to maneuver, go back to, open, save, whatever it is you want to do in order to make life in DC easier by doing online. DC is the best. Like they just, hands down, better than Maryland, Virginia by far. Middle schoolers on Capitol Hill attend Jefferson Middle School Academy, Stuart Hobson, or Elliott Hine Middle School. And there's just one high school covering all high school age students in Capitol Hill, and that is Eastern Senior High School. It has a great athletics program, a nice range of extracurricular activities, and Eastern is number 2 in eSport nationwide. Now, I told you that Capitol Hill is very near and dear to my heart because I used to live there, but there is more than that. This building right here was Frigger's Hardware from 1920 until just about a decade ago, when there was a fire. Since then, they have done a wonderful job rebuilding. The sign still remains. Frigger's Hardware has moved right next door to an adjacent newly built building, and actually in 2021, they converted to a 100% employee-owned company, which I think is very cool. So the building now houses a few different businesses, but what is important to me about this little corner here on 11th and Pennsylvania Avenue, this part of the building for many, many decades was a small publishing company called Food Chemical News, where my dad worked for over 30 years. So I spent my entire childhood coming to visit him here, and it was actually the first place that I got a job, a legal job with a work permit. When I was 14, I got my work permit, and that summer, I drove into work with my dad every day to work at Food Chemical News, and then left midday, taking the few block walk to Eastern Market Metro, back home to where we lived in Arlington. And my dad actually rode his bike to work for many years, 11 miles back and forth each day. So biking can be very convenient on Capitol Hill as well. And now, above the Freighter's building, are 34 condo units, many of which have sold over the past few years in a range of $650,000 up to $2.1 million. Maybe someday I could look into buying my dad's old office and moving in there. And that brings us to my favorite topic, the real estate section. The average sales price of homes sold on Capitol Hill over the last 4 months period is $1.189 million. Comparing that to the rest of Southeast DC, the average is $710,000, and all of the DC average is $902,000. Now, the average size of homes sold over the same period is 1,882 square feet, which is a fairly large size for a prime location in DC, such as Capitol Hill. That makes the square foot cost about $760 per square foot, which is pretty good as well, comparatively, which we'll see as we look at the other neighborhoods nearby. Let's talk about some of the closest and most similar neighborhoods. First of all, also bordering 395 in Southeast DC, maybe the most comparable neighborhood, Navy Yard. One main difference is that Navy Yard does have a lot more condos, and a lot of it's much newer construction. But what we're looking at Navy Yard is an average sales price of $599,000, so half the price, and 919 square feet, so less than half the size. The average per square foot price there is $652. Once again, I think that reflects the fact that a lot of these are going to be condos, also have a condo fee, so they're smaller, cost less, but you may have a condo fee to pay in addition. Another very comparable neighborhood would be Southwest Waterfront. Again, more condos, old and new. A lot of the waterfront was developed in the 1960s and then had, in the last decade, a huge boom in expansion along the waterfront, where they converted what was once a few large sort of resort-style restaurants. Places like Phillips and places to launch your boat has now been reimagined, re-envisioned into this large grand-scale development. Another neighborhood I truly love, a neighborhood which I lived in for a good chunk of time. That'll be one of my next videos. The average price in the Southwest Waterfront was $1.019 million. The average size was 1,365 square feet, so pretty big for mostly condos. And the average square foot cost came out to $736. Now, this neighborhood does have a ton of condos and co-ops. Some of the condos are older than what you would see at Navy Yard, 1960s, so newer than what you might see in Capitol Hill, early 1900s. Like I said, I'll get into it more on a coming soon video, but definitely like a different style of life on the Southwest Waterfront. Other neighborhoods to compare, Capitol Hill 2, that have a similar sort of flair and style, maybe distance from Federal Triangle is similar, are Georgetown, also along the waterfront, but on the other side of the mall. The average sales price there is $1.562 million, average square footage 1768, bringing the average square foot price to $1,002 per square foot. More expensive than Capitol Hill, you get a little bit of a smaller home, and I'll tell you what, you're much less likely to get parking in Georgetown. Along Federal Triangle and Chinatown, you have Penn Quarter. The average sales price there is $546,000. Average square footage, 837, so more of a older style size building or a newer one where they're just trying to maximize the usage of space since it is so prime, making the average square foot cost $670 per square foot. And then we have Dupont Circle. The average sales price there is $669. For a neighborhood with a fantastic name, a lot of conveniences, so much to do, Dupont Circle could be a really nice fit. Again, it is mostly condos. The average size there is 970 square foot and a per square foot cost of $719. And then we have Bloomingdale, worth noting because it is a little bit further out from Federal Triangle and all that. Still a really easy trip to get downtown to work. However, it has not been developed as much. So there you're looking at an average sales price of $950,000. The average square foot sold was $2,041, so quite a substantial property compared to the Ohio condo mixed neighborhoods. More row homes in Bloomingdale. And the average square foot cost there is $586, so it could be a really nice place to get your foot in the door in DC. And another one of comparable style of living that you get on Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill has the Capitol and the mall nearby, Eastern Market, some nice touches like that. I'm also going to talk about Woodley Park, which is a great location along Rock Creek Parkway, a little northeast of Georgetown. Has the National Zoo there, easy reach to Adams Morgan and places like that for entertainment. Between the name, Woodley Park, being an amazing place to live that's also very quiet and comfortable the way that I view Capitol Hill. The average sales price there was $1.985 million. But for that price, people are getting a home that's over 3,000 square feet. The average size sold was 3,056 square feet for an average square foot price of $787. Although the homes do cost more than the other neighborhoods we talked about, they're bigger. So it's a really nice suburban feel neighborhood. May cost you more, but you could probably get a smaller row home there for less than what you might be paying. Well, you could definitely get a smaller row home there for less than what you would be paying in Georgetown and probably in Capitol Hill as well. Now, Capitol Hill's closest neighbor, Kingman Park. You're literally falling over the border into Kingman Park from Capitol Hill. So very, very similar as far as location goes. You just walk a couple extra blocks to get to the Capitol or to get to Eastern Market. Kingman Park, the average sales price there was $670,000. And the average square foot of a sale, $14.58, so a little bit smaller, but half the price of Capitol Hill. The average square foot cost is $559. So if you're looking for something like the Capitol Hill lifestyle and want to save some money on your mortgage costs each month, Kingman Park is a fantastic place to consider. And another neighborhood I'd like to touch on, which is actually east of the Anacostia, is Fort Dupont. It is the very first neighborhood that you get to when you cross over that bridge from RFK Stadium. So basically from the Capitol, you go Capitol Hill, Kingman Park, RFK Stadium, and then Fort Dupont. And in Fort Dupont, the average sales price was $431,000. The average square footage, 1,505, again, mostly row homes. And the average square foot cost is $380 per square foot. So you really do get a bargain if you're willing to cross the Anacostia River. Now, the way that I see it, if I was going to make a smart purchase, an investment property, or a home that I knew would improve in value over the next 5 years, maybe a lot more than the rest of the neighborhoods in DC, I would look at Kingman Park or Fort Dupont, and that is for good reason. Touched on RFK Stadium a little bit, but the interesting thing about RFK Stadium is that that's going under a complete and total reconstruction. It's been closed for years, it's going to be demolished, and the plans are amazing. It's going to be a multi-use sports center, activity center for youth and adults, as well as a large market hall. It's planned to give foodies a new place to go for fresh food and world-class dining in DC. Now, for the anchor at this new redevelopment of the RFK Stadium complex, there are a few different options, and one of them is that the Commanders may come back to that same spot and have a new venue there for their football games. So that's pretty exciting. Having the DC team back in DC would be pretty cool. The first football game I ever went to was at RFK. There are also plans for pedestrian bridges across the Anacostia and to Kingman Park, and there's a couple islands over there that they plan to develop as well. So with RFK right in between Kingman Park and Fort Dupont, Capitol Hill right there, and everything you've got downtown DC, I see Kingman Park and Fort Dupont as the very best places in DC if you would want them purchased and ensure that your investment grows quickly. Earlier this year, they decided and announced that the DC government would pay for the demolition of old RFK Stadium, which makes way for the private part of the plan and the true redevelopment of the RFK DC Armory area to move forward much more quickly. So I can see that all being complete, in the next 5 or so years. So making a purchase now in Kingman Park or Fort Dupont could be a really amazing investment opportunity. To look a little bit at the range of the options you could get on Capitol Hill for any price, we've got this recent sale here in March for $339,000. It is very close to the Capitol on A Street in a smaller building. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 474 square feet. So they did do better than a studio in that small space. Year built 1908. $339,000 with a co-op fee of only $268 per month. And then the apex of homes sold on Capitol Hill in the last 4 months, you've got this lovely, charming federal style row home sold for $2.63 million. 5 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, over 2,500 square feet, built in 1900. Wonderful upgrades, sort of an ode to the past in the decorating. Beautiful powder room, I love that wallpaper. Many original style touches, and then you've got a rooftop deck, which is pretty great, and a very nice looking backyard. And that you'll notice there are steps down from the front door, which means that it most likely has a rentable basement unit. Many homes in DC do have that, so let's just say that you're looking at a home where your mortgage is going to cost you $4,000 a month. Maybe you could rent that basement out for $1,700. That might make it much easier for you to manage those payments. There are some listings on Capitol Hill for over $4 million time to time. There's one available now for $4.5 million right across the street from the Supreme Court and the Library of Congress. Oh, and looky here, one right next door for $359,000. And looks like one popped up for $5 million since I started doing my research for this video. Anyways, this one is a pretty great federal style row home. Built in 1850. 3 bedrooms, 4 baths, really nice garage. And check out that kitchen, it almost looks like it's original. Now, if you want to see this home, the $5 million home, the $359,000 home, or anything else on Capitol Hill, please go down to the description below. I've put a link to this property search so you can take a look at all the details for these and any other listings that are available now on Capitol Hill. So what do we have left to look at real estate wise for Capitol Hill? I know the rentals. So if you are not ready to purchase a home on Capitol Hill, but you'd still like to live there, just get an idea of what you can get in the 1 to 4 bedroom size rental, excluding studios and excluding, 5+ because they're not quite as common. So Capitol Hill rentals, 1 to 4 bedroom. Closed over the last 4 months. The average price was $3,353 a month. They ranged from $1,450 to $9,750 for a 4 bedroom. Probably a pretty nice rental. But in any case, you can see you could probably get a row home for just around the $3,000 range. 1 or 2 bedrooms, $1,400 up to say $2,500 range. So I don't know. I sometimes touch on cost of living, but I feel like once you talk about the real estate, the cost of living is pretty clear. An important thing to know about all of DC is that they don't have tax on groceries. So that's kind of a nice thing. You save some money there. Otherwise, I haven't personally seen too much in my pocketbook going either direction versus living in Arlington and Alexandria, where I've also lived. Gas is one thing. Capitol Hill does have some gas stations that are pretty reasonable if you're headed out the direction toward Anacostia on Pennsylvania Avenue. Some of the ones closer in are pretty pricey, but you have all the convenience, so the cost of living you're going to save because you can take the metro places. I just figured out recently that if I got rid of my car, I'm a realtor, so I can't, but I'd probably be saving about $400 a month just off of insurance and the price of the car if I was just taking lifts and stuff like that instead. So that should be it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it to the end of my video. Because you watched to the end of this video, I think you would really like this one next. Please don't hesitate to reach out anytime. I love talking real estate, neighborhoods, cities with my YouTube viewers. It's always so much fun when they reach out to me to just ask questions about the real estate market, area in general, or when they ask me to be their realtor. End scene. I mean it. I love it when y'all reach out to me to be your realtor. I do. I really do.